It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're going to Subway.
Subway is open 24 hours. Like, people kill me when they say things like that, because it's like Subway is open 24 hours for a reason. So that when you're hungry at night and you ain't got no food, you go to Subway.
There's a famous saying, live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Guess who said that? It's that bitch Muhammad Gandhi. That's the way I look at things. Every day is a new day to learn something that you didn't know before. And today, I learned one of two things. I learned that eating meat was sexist and racist. Either that is true, or leftists are f***ing idiots. Here in a minute, I'll let you decide for yourself. The brilliant woman you're about to see is named Carol Adams. She's a writer, a vegan feminist, whatever the hell that is, and an animal rights advocate. I know what you're thinking. How can one person have so many worthless titles? You have to dream big, my friends. Let's take a look at what she has to say.
I call upon Carol Adams to conclude the side proposition.
I've read the motion, and I believe we should move beyond all meat. So, what we choose to eat has consequences far beyond the circumference of our plates. Specifically, your vote tonight expresses your allegiance to or rejection of a white supremacist patriarchal worldview. Do we vote to further inequality and sustain world-destroying violence? In the sexual politics of meat, I introduced the concept of animals as absent reference. In order to be eaten, animals must disappear as living beings, that is, be killed. They then disappear conceptually, as so many forms in which we eat animals' corpses are massaged by euphemistic language: hamburger, steak, pork, bacon, etc. Even the speaker just before me talked about turkeys. He's talking about dead, butchered turkeys of whom part of their bodies will be eaten. 21st century animal eating requires our complicity in a new colonialism. We know how settler colonialism worked, an erase and replace system that forced indigenous people off the land, replacing them with cattle and white settlers. I recognize today as Indigenous Peoples' Day. One of the defining aspects of the colonial legacy is an ongoing white supremacist belief system and an ownership paradigm. It's the new colonialism that boasts, I'll hunt for myself and be grateful like the Native Americans. As well, like the Native Americans, I thank the animal for their sacrifice. And I wonder, how do you know the animal would have picked you to feed off their corpse? The argument that hunting is ethical presumes that some primeval form of eating exists, unmediated by corrupting influences of society. There's no room in the new colonialism for an indigenous worldview to exist. 70% of the population would have to be eliminated for people to try to rely on hunting to survive. Who would live and who dies and who decides? As for domesticated animals, Percy Shelley pointed out just after being expelled from Oxford, the quantity of nutritious vegetable matter consumed in fattening the carcass of an ox would afford 10 times the sustenance if gathered immediately from the bosom of the earth. 200 years after Shelley, as we've heard, 1/3 of the landmass of the world is committed to animal agriculture. Entire ecosystems are disappearing. 80% of deforested acres in the Amazon were cleared for animal-based cattle grazing. And yet tonight at dinner, I saw the lions eaters send meat back from their plates. So-called free-range animals contribute more greenhouse gases, while killing them in mobile slaughterhouses requires more water than industrial slaughterhouses and leaves behind an immense amount of waste, requiring an intense amount of chemicals in the process. This is felt disproportionately by countries in the global south. Their carbon footprint is smaller, but they experience more frequent and intense climate change-caused weather events. These events especially affect girls and young women. Your hamburger comes with a dose of misogyny. The Western world colonized their space without sending a single beef eater. Through colonial power, the diet of beef-loving English people became normative. The food heritage of pre-conquest peoples, like the land itself, was overrun. It was the colonizers, especially the British, who declared that the virility of meat-eating nations explained their success over the supposed feminine and weak rice-eating countries they defeated. Historically, the vast majority of the world lived without animal protein as a central part of their diet. The assumption that the best protein comes from corpses is a racist belief, as it erases and replaces indigenous African, Asian, Mesoamerican cultural food practices. Meat eating is also one of the ways gender-based structures of oppression are perpetuated. Men in the West are taunted to renew their man card by eating meat because that's what real men do. That's the sexual politics of meat, and it reveals how unsettled masculinity really is. Back home, my library card is good for 7 years, but a man card can expire between breakfast and lunch if someone eats a veggie burger. Masculinity, a construct of the gender binary facing constant destabilization, feels always under threat, and eating animals is its protection racket.
Question?
That's why after 9/11, That's why after 9/11, a focus on men as heroes and on meat eating became part of the reclamation of a wounded masculinity. When a black man was elected as US president, we saw how white this wounded masculinity was. White supremacists weaponized it, eating meat, eggs, and dairy. Images of milk-drinking white men, of platters groaning with meat, and the baiting of liberal men as so-called soy boys are all part of the neo-Nazi messaging. This is their right, the neo-Nazis say. This is their identity. The new colonization rests on the unstable foundation of white men's insecurities. Look at the way people, men, in the animal industry speak of female animals as willing and ready to be made forcibly pregnant, which female animals are powerless to resist. There'd be no meat eating without the constant forced reproduction by female animals. Yet popular culture is flooded with references to sexy cows, sexy pigs, sexy chickens, sexy fishes, who all just want to have fun. They want to be pregnant and they want to be killed because this feminized sexuality wants to be eaten. The only desire animals are credited with possessing is the desire to be consumed, which strangely can only be expressed after their death. So your vote tonight is important, but even more important is the question of what or who will be on your plate in the morning. Sweet dreams.
Wasn't that amazing? I'm literally crying right now. I don't think I've ever heard a better argument in my life. Now, I'm trying to figure out why the students were laughing. This woman is obviously brilliant and an inspiration to so many every day. She's not just an old crazy hippie leftist. And she makes a lot of good points. Eating meat is obviously racist and sexist. Take, for example, early humans 200,000 years ago. They were all just crazy racist, and they hated women so much, I really don't think they kept any alive. Because as I've recently learned, 2 men can also have a baby. Hashtag science. You know, that's got me thinking too. Since our teeth and our digestive system can digest meat, does that mean God is a racist? Is this woman trying to say God's white? Great. This woman's gone from being my hero to the bane of my existence. This bitch needs to be canceled. Immediately. Throw her in the gulags. Now, before you start laughing and making fun of her, on a serious note, she was inducted into the Animal Rights Hall of Fame. I'm not in the Animal Rights Hall of Fame. And I'm fine with that because it sounds stupid. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, as YouTube doesn't like to share videos such as mine. It's almost like big tech, athletes, musicians, Hollywood elites, the richest people in the world, and half the political spectrum doesn't want to hear from half of the country. It's weird, right? Anyway, until next time, take care.